What's up, Jacob? How you doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing excellent. Love the map behind you. I
Thanks. Thanks.
living up to the hype already. First and foremost, is it Jacob or Jake? What do you prefer to go by?
Jacob.
All right, don't want to assume
Yeah.
anything. I see it
Yeah.
everywhere, but I didn't want to assume that one.
Yeah. No worries.
I appreciate you connected. All right, so you are a big time traveler. Where are we chatting from today? Where are you?
We're home right now, so we are based in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've been spending, trying to shift more of our time to spend time at home rather than be on the road so much.
Yeah, I read a blog on you. I don't know how recent it is because I couldn't find the date, but it seemed pretty recent. It's your wife, correct?
Yes.
You and your wife, do you kind of trade homes every year? Is that something you really do? You find a new location for a home?
So we did that for 7 years, up until 2019, like right before the pandemic.
Okay.
And then during the pandemic, we were kind of like, oh, this is what it feels like to be in one city longer than a year. It's been a while. And so we kind of decided for the time being to stay put and have more of a home base.
So you've been in Vegas for the last, what, four years or so?
Yeah, 4 years, half of
Yeah.
that's pandemic, so it doesn't really count. But
It
yeah,
counts. Yeah, it
yeah,
counts.
yeah.
No, like I said, thank you for joining me. I know you're a busy man and you got a lot going on, and what you got top five travel blog in the US. Like, first of all, that's freaking awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you,
Um,
thank you.
Done a lot of research since we connected, and I completely understand why. What does that mean? What does top five travel blog mean?
We base that on a couple of basically numbers. Mostly it's just traffic numbers for our site. So previous to Analytics switching over to kind of the new GA4, it was kind of based on monthly unique visitors and monthly page views.
Okay,
And the way we kind of found this out is there were a few different websites kind of aggregating information and putting together a list of the top travel blogs.
nice.
And so yeah, it's kind of it's official, unofficial, right? I mean, there are definitely probably some sites out there that may not have been counted into the list, but we're definitely in that top number somewhere.
Dude, congrats, man.
Thank
Well,
you.
well deserved, well earned. And I
Appreciate
see
it.
that you were recently talked about on the Office Ladies podcast, huh? Did you know that was coming?
We didn't. So that was a surprise that was a friend of ours sent that to us. Just said, "Hey, I was listening to a podcast and heard a shout out." So I have no idea how they found us. Most likely, just Google SEO searching for that content. And we that's a lot of kind of our strategy in our blog and making sure we have some we're writing content that is has good potential for Google SEO search.
Yeah, you and your wife have great brains behind this business, which we'll get into momentarily. It's not just taking pictures and seeing what sticks. You actually have a plan, and you're doing a great job with that. Before we get there, I'm curious, why Vegas? Why settle on Vegas? For somebody that knows the US and the world as much as you do, why did you settle in Vegas?
Yeah, so we spent 7 years moving to a new city every year within the U.S.
Can you
Part
name
of
those cities? I'm curious. Which ones
Yeah,
are
so
there?
we're originally from Atlanta. We moved out to L.A., then Vegas and San Diego, Portland, and then actually before Portland, we lived in Airstream for 3 months and drove all over the U.S.
Mm,
So then we did Portland, New York, and then after New York, we were looking for some place that um, we had started talking about, yeah, going back to a place that we've been to before. Vegas came up because for a few reasons, really. One, we're looking for bloggability of a city, right?
mm, mm.
Is there going to be new content coming out all the time? Is it a city that we can really build a deep catalog on? And there's a good number for searches and whatnot. So that was kind of always a conversation we had in any of the cities that we picked. Secondly, how's the airport?
Mm.
Is it something that's going to be easy to fly in and out of? Good example, San Diego, Portland, they didn't necessarily have huge hub airports. So when we were traveling a lot, it was just more of a pain because we had to connect a lot for
Mm.
all of our flights. So finding somewhere that had good direct flights and whatnot. And then more for personal reasons, we rock climb quite a bit.
Mm.
And we started rock climbing after we left Vegas the first time we lived here. And for a lot of people, they don't realize Vegas is actually has amazing outdoor rock climbing. One, you have Red Rock Canyon, which is right here in the city, 30 minutes from where we live. But even outside of that, within like 4 to 5 hours, there are world-class climbing spots all over the Southwest.
Well, that's pretty awesome. What's his
Yeah.
name? Free Solo. What's his name? Alex.
Honnold, yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Alex
he lives
Honnold. He
there.
he does. He does. He lives here. Again, good playground to have in your backyard.
Well, have you run into him at all?
Yeah, we've run into him a couple times out in the boulders, and he bouldering isn't quite what he does,
Mhm.
but he's out there always just kind of playing on rocks.
Wow,
So
that's
it's cool to run into
amazing.
him.
My
Yeah.
wife is my wife's a climber. I am not a climber. I have too big of a fear of heights to do that. So props to you. I give people credit that can do that because it's like I can't get more than maybe 10, 15 feet off the ground before I start getting a little nervous. She
Yeah,
wants,
yeah. We boulder mostly, so we're just wrestling the pebbles.
yeah, yeah.
But we essentially got into it for the same reason. We're kind of afraid of heights and trying to conquer that. We still don't do a lot of sport or trad, but mostly stick to bouldering right now.
Yeah, that's cool. I would love to do that. We did some bouldering up in Lake Tahoe a couple years ago.
Nice.
We'll definitely do that again.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was a really good time. She wants to do the Via Ferratas, and so I'm just like, nah. You can go ahead.
Nice,
Just come
nice.
home safely, please. That's all that matters to me because I ain't doing that. But yeah, so how did you pick those cities to live in before? Was that kind of random? It doesn't really seem like anything's random with you. It seems like you think about everything. So how'd you pick those cities?
Yeah, yeah. To back up a little bit, before we started the travel blog, we lived in Atlanta. My wife was a wedding photographer full time. I had a corporate job when I met her. And after I met her, I ended up kind of transitioning to help her full time with that business. And I think with anything, we're always just we have some side projects that are always kind of for fun, and if it turns into something, it's great. If not, it's still something that we're kind of excited and passionate about.
So what does
So at the
helping her
time,
mean? Like
um,
website built and all that kind of stuff?
yeah, so I
Okay.
mostly ran kind of the business side. She's an amazing photographer. When it comes to like photos and everything, that's all her.
Yeah, wedding is
Um,
tough too. That's I do photography a little bit. I won't do weddings. That's a
yeah,
hard
yeah.
gig. That's
It
hard.
is. So I would go like wedding day, I would help second shoot and all of that. But outside of that, I focus more on the business, bringing in clients, building relationships with the vendors, and
Nice.
then yeah, just running kind of everything on the business side so that she could really focus on the creative. So during that time, my brother and I had also started a YouTube channel that was mostly music based. We were doing like covers, some originals, but mostly covers. And we ended up getting some traction. That was 2012-ish, and started to kind of meet some of the people in the industry. We were on a show called Internet Icon, which was kind of like I don't know, America's Got Talent, but for content creators, YouTube
Okay.
creators. So we had gotten invited onto that show, and we did that. We shot that out in LA, met a lot of cool people. So the first jump was kind of just moving to LA, not really for the blog, but for YouTube. Esther, who's my wife, was getting tired of wedding photography and wanted to transition. So that was just kind of a natural step. So my wife, my brother, and we moved out to LA together. And while we were focusing on the YouTube channel, my wife was looking for something kind of new to do. And at that time, we had traveled a lot. We had that was just always something that we loved doing.
Mhm.
But we never really got around to editing any of those photos because once she was done editing wedding photos, she didn't want to touch anything else.
Get it. Yep.
Yeah, and so for a couple years, she really focused on the blog herself. And so our first two moves, the first move was to LA, and we weren't sure if we were going to like it. So we told ourselves, let's give ourselves a year and see what it's like. And then that time, she kind of started the travel blog just for fun. And then the next year, we decided, LA is not the place we want to be. but we knew some people in Vegas from the YouTube space, and we still had some projects in LA. So it was like an easy commute, but a way for us to go to another city. And that's kind of when the blog idea hatched as well. We had been kind of talking about it. It started off on our wedding website, which was just estherandjacob.com. And I think we transitioned it over maybe in late 2014, 2015-ish to Local Adventure. But the whole idea was, we have we have a lot of friends who didn't travel much or who never left the state that they grew up in, and which is totally fine. But I think a lot of people at that time, when they thought about traveling, it was always these far off destinations, these exotic places. But really, we wanted to encourage people to explore their greater backyard, whether it's city, state, or country. So that, is really cool to see, especially during the pandemic when people really had no other option. And just seeing that transition of people falling in love with like all these national parks and all these amazing places that we have that you just never get around to if all you're doing is kind of looking outwards.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. Just tack onto that is you are so right. I moved to North Carolina in 2009. That's still there. And I had never branched off into like the Boone area until like a couple years ago. And it's like 2.5, 3 hours away. It is beautiful. It's just, here I am thinking everything's got to be on a plane. You got to go out and explore. When you just get in a car and go an hour or two away, you can find such great adventures. So I fully support what you're saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So going back to, I guess your question was, how did we decide on what cities? So we started off those first 2 years kind of, based on kind of YouTube stuff. And at that time, by the second year, when we were living in Vegas, I started to transition over to help Esther a lot more because the travel blog was just starting to gain some traction. It started as a hobby, but she quickly realized there were probably a handful of people at the time doing it full time. And these kind of OG travel bloggers, there just weren't resources at the time like there are now. So Esther started doing a lot of research, started learning SEO, started to really kind of treat it more of a job, where she would kind of give herself goals. There was a period of time where we were doing 3 to 5 new blog posts a week, because we were just trying to build a deep catalog on our site so that when people landed there, there was enough content to browse around. And over time, we just, it was kind of a slow burn, but we continued to grow and learn more about the industry and learn more about how to build our personal business with it. And so, I think when we decided on each city, at the end of the year or towards that kind of 9-month mark, we would have that conversation of like, where do we want to go next? And a lot of that did have to do with personally, what part of the country do we want to see? What cities have good blog and searchability? Just because our goal was always to spend at least 50% of our time in that city, which didn't always happen, but the goal was to, be able to explore locally and feel like a local within that year. And then we went with a year because it just felt like a good amount of time for us to really explore, but also kind of a good deadline for us to really, it still push us to go out every weekend. We still had a limited amount of time. A lot of that was kind of how we decided on which cities we lived in. And we were fortunate enough to kind of know some people in each city already. So we had kind of a good base.
That's awesome. Was Vegas the clear front runner, or did you have a close second?
After New York, we were kind of debating between the Bay Area and Vegas. Bay Area is somewhere that we've always wanted to live. I'm glad we didn't end up there right during the pandemic. And for me, I like after paying rent in New York for a year, I was like, man, I just want to go somewhere where we get a break for our wallets. We decided to come to Vegas to give it another try now that we climbed. Just with the timing of everything, it worked out really well.
That's awesome. Yeah. I find you're interesting because I'm writing notes as you're talking and you're kind of answering questions as I'm going here, because one of the things I have is like, you started this almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
And It's a big thing now, but you were like one of the originators, you and your wife. That's pretty freaking great. Like, was was COVID like pouring gasoline on this because it was like more and more people started to do that and going to travel national parks and stuff like that?
Yeah, so COVID definitely, the first, I would say 3, 4 months, we took a massive hit like everybody.
Mm,
When there was nothing open at all, everything was down in lockdown. People were still weren't traveling at that time just because everything was so unsure. I think we dropped down to maybe 20% of our traffic, our
wow.
regular traffic, which obviously was a worry because that was never something, we always take this year to year and we have this conversation of like, well, if, Google changes their algorithm significantly or if anything happens, there's a good chance, there's our cat, Ollie. There's a chance that that we'd have to to pivot and do something else with our jobs.
Mm,
We understand that there's just that kind of we've kind of chosen that place where it's not always in our control.
mm,
Um, so we were worried at first because we never thought that travel would just disappear completely. But once things started opening again, I would say it definitely, we were fortunate in that we bounced back a lot faster than a lot of our colleagues did in this space, just because a lot of them still focused on a lot of international content
right.
and whatnot. And so they had to kind of shift to do that. At the same time, during COVID, we've never seen that many new websites pop up. Competition increased significantly, right? You suddenly had these people, who were either traveling all the time already, and had maybe good Instagram accounts or whatnot, but never had time to work on their website, and now they had no choice but to really sit at home and work on it. And then you had all these kind of new players coming in, like, well, I'm home now, and I do have this backlog of stuff. Maybe I will start a travel blog. So it was interesting to see kind of that influx of people, which I think for the most part has died out now that things are kind of back to normal for the
Mm.
most part. People don't necessarily. It's not necessarily the sexiest job or exactly what it looks to be on social media.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit because, when you see a travel blogger, like I have all your images pulled up right here, it's like, how do I live that life?
Yeah.
I'm sure people ask you that all the time. People, if they don't, they're looking at your blog and seeing it and they're thinking, how do I do that? I want to keep hitting on just a little bit what you were talking about. And I had a question about like, did they die out? And you said, yeah, a lot of these bloggers kind of died out a little bit. But correct me if I'm wrong, the influx of people in the national parks is still extremely high, right?
Absolutely. I think because of COVID, I think people realize again how much is accessible within a driving distance.
Mm,
And people ended up exploring places that they never bothered to before, which is great. It's been amazing to see people pick up new hobbies, even rock climbing, for example. The amount of people now that we see during climbing season at Red Rock, um, even within like a couple of years, has exploded. People are just traveling in. They found this new passion, and same with the national parks. There's tons of people exploring now. It's always I would say, a very two-sided coin for us,
mm.
or double-sided blade, I guess is a better thing. It's one part we love that people are getting out there and exploring, but at the same time, we're very much advocates to make sure we do it responsibly, and that we keep these places as pristine as possible for future generations. So it's always a tough thing, right? We're balancing like, yeah, you want to get that Instagram shot, but don't go off trail just to
Mm.
get the better shot. And it's a lot of educating and a lot of people who don't necessarily have experience being outdoors or being in these national parks or what are what's the leave no trace principles. So we do our best to try to educate with that, and encourage people to really be stewards of the land.
For sure. That's a common message. A lot of the travelers I have on my podcast. I know Adam and Catherine, Adventures A plus K, they do follow you. I've become friends with them over the years. actually had dinner with one last night, wandering on the weekends. Liz Bailey, I'll give
Oh,
her a shout
nice.
out. She's going to all the national parks within a couple of years. Um, One thing we've all kind of talked about is, maybe you want to comment in this, maybe you don't, is kind of like sometimes the negative messages come out because you're publicizing these lands that people used to, no one used to be there, and now people are like, God damn, you bringing people to my area, now they're ruining it and
Yeah.
stuff like that. You ever get those messages too? Do you have to deal with that stuff?
We do definitely.
Yeah.
Depending on where you are, and a lot of these small towns, and the amazing kind of communities that they've developed is they can't necessarily handle the influx of people,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't necessarily want it, right? And so we're very careful. We work with a lot of the marketing destinations, and we try to really stay in line with their messaging as well.
That's great.
There's places, for example, that have amazing natural hot springs. And yeah, we want to share about it, but if it is something that they want to keep, again, keep protected, a lot of times we may mention it, but we won't necessarily give exactly where it is or
Mm-hmm.
coordinates of where it is. So that the people who do want to find it and genuinely are out there to adventure, they can do a little more research and find those spots. But at the same time, we're still able to kind of toe that line of showing them cool places without necessarily inundating it with people completely.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is always a constant discussion and a way to that something that we're always talking about.
Yeah, I want to get in behind the scenes here in just a moment, but one place that people just can't get into, and I saw you did, was the Wave.
Yes.
I want to talk about how the hell you got in there and what was the process behind that.
Yeah, so we were this was during our Airstream days where we spent 3 months in the Airstream. I had done the online lottery for the Wave, I would say a handful of times before that trip, just never with any luck. And so that's been a bucket list item for us. So we made sure to put Kanab on our road trip stops. And we ended up deciding we would dedicate a couple weeks to being there if need be, and we would just go to the in-person lottery.
Hmm.
So for those who aren't familiar, there's kind of two lotteries to get tickets to the Wave, which they only allow 20 people in a day. That may
It's
have
amazing.
changed. Yeah. And so we did it at the time. It was an in-person lottery. And I would say on average, you would get 100 plus people there every day. So we went in and we got lucky. I think it was our second or third day. Our number got
Wow.
picked. And there was a guy, I remember on that day, we found out one of the guys was from France. He had been there for 2 to 3 weeks, going every day and never got picked. And it was his last day. So we had this discussion like, should we give it to him? No, I don't know if we're gonna get lucky again. So we didn't.
I
But
wouldn't blame you. I would not blame you.
yeah, but it's just kind of that kind of luck. What's cool now is they've kind of switched the system so that their in-person lottery is they have a geofence now. So as long as you're kind of within the area, you can enter a lottery via your phone.
No kidding.
So you don't have to wake up and actually be in the office every morning. So there's a geofencing one now, which if you're looking to do it, the best chance is just to go to Kanab, hunker yourself down for a week. What I would do is just you make other plans, have some other options because there's a lot of really cool formations out there that don't require
Mm,
that kind of permit system.
mm.
They have like the white pocket, which is I would say equally amazing. And so yeah, go out there, enter the lottery every morning. You'll find out via your phone if you got it. If not, then you just you have a list of things that you want to check out otherwise.
Did it live up to the hype? Was it worth it, or is it like cool to say you did it?
A little bit of both for me.
Yeah.
I think for Esther, she definitely like, as a photographer, she
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, the formation's very cool. And I think what was for me, what was cool is that there is a lot of other stuff out there that you don't really see people share necessarily because everybody, is sharing that iconic Wave photo.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of cool other features out there. And it's nice because the hike's not too long. I think it was roughly 3 miles each
Okay.
way. But I think one thing we want to do is eventually, hopefully, do it again and do some astrophotography out there.
Oh
We
yeah,
a
that would be
little too
awesome.
chicken to go out there in the dark, not knowing the path for the first time.
Mm, that would
Yeah.
be, yeah, that'd be incredible. Another thing I want to chat with you real quick about. Well, when did you go to Havasu Falls?
Havasu, that was shoot, I don't even remember what year it was. That was quite a while ago as well. We ended up going because we had a friend who had permits for it.
Yeah.
And just kind of they had some friends who last minute cancellation. They asked us if we wanted to join, so we did. And I know that process has gotten much more difficult now and much more expensive than when we went. Havasu, I would say is a mixed bag from our experience. You know, it was a little more spring breaky than we thought it would be. It gets a bit.
When did you go? I went in April, but it was like 6 or 7 years ago now. I guess
Yo,
when
got
did
it,
you
got
go?
it.
Yeah.
I don't even remember off the top of my head. I would have to
But
look.
yeah, the spring breaky thing is real. So it was like Havasu Lake too, right? Like I know that's not the same thing, but
Yeah, Havasu Lake is very much spring break.
yeah.
Yeah, I think Havasupai is interesting. It was just the crowd because you have so many different options to get in there.
Hmm.
You know, you can helicopter, you can donkey your stuff in. Um, you end up getting a very different crowd. There were some people who had, you know, coolers and floaties and
Yeah.
blasting music, and then other people who were more kind of the outdoors, just wanted to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, did you hike it?
We did.
Yeah. It's pretty cool,
We
huh?
did. Yeah, it's a pretty brutal hike when it's hot, but it's cool.
Yeah, it was a good time. I was just wondering what your process was to get those tickets. Clearly different than mine because I think it's different now. I think now is like the whole online thing and the
It
lottery system.
is.
I had a call for 3 days straight, nonstop, and I
Yeah.
finally got in. They answered the phone. I was like, oh my God, I started freaking out.
Yeah, so when we went, it was the same process too. It was what you have to call in and
Yeah.
you hope they picked up. And yeah, that's why when our friends had the extra spots, it was like no questions. Yeah, we'll be there.
Yep.
We'll meet
We took the chopper out though. We're just like,
you.
yeah, we'll
Nice.
take it. But it was like a 6 or 7 hour long wait in line to get that chopper out because they take the Havasu
Yeah.
people out first, and they bring in supplies. Then it was whoever got in line first, and
And it's not a
yeah,
guarantee, right?
no,
It's
it's
just kind
not.
of
It's
like
not a
you
guarantee.
could end up, nope, they don't have any more space today, and you still got to
Yep.
hike it out. Yeah.
I do not want to do that. Especially one of my favorite heights. Last thing I want to do is climb up the damn Grand Canyon wall. But yeah, let's get to the brains behind the business. So you kind of gave the story of how you became travel bloggers. I think one thing, like I said, it looks glorious, right? But let's talk about the work that goes in behind the scenes and like perhaps even some of the sacrifices that both of you have made over the years. Because yes, it's fun, but I imagine you're constantly coming up with content, filming, editing. Um, I'm sure at some point in the beginning, you're where's your next paycheck coming from? On the
Yeah.
money, are you comfortable being where you are, constantly moving around, thinking next locations? I just want to go a little bit behind the scenes of all the work that goes into this.
Yeah, definitely. You wear a lot of hats running any sort of small business. There was always there's always something to work on. You know, even now I can
Mm,
think I could probably make a list of 200 things that I could possibly be working on for the
mm,
blog. So first off is kind of, that work-life balance. I think starting off, you need to put work in. Yes, there are ways that you could suddenly blow up and go viral and whatnot, but none of that is guaranteed. There's no formula for that. Really, the best formula is to put the hours in,
mm,
put the sweat and tears in. And what's amazing now is that there are just so many resources out there that teach you SEO, that teach you how to design a blog, that teach you, social media. Even if there's free stuff, there's paid stuff, there's just so many things that you can access now. When we started, again, it was pretty new,
mm.
which was great for us because there was much fewer sites out there to compete with, but we had to teach ourselves a lot, and it was a much slower growth process. Um, The way we spent our time really significantly changes year to year, I would say, or I guess not year to year, but from when we started to now, it's completely different. I kind of mentioned earlier that at the beginning, we gave ourselves specific goals just because we knew we wanted to learn certain disciplines. One was just to be able to crank content out. So doing that 3 to 5 blog posts a week for a whole year was brutal, but was great for the site. Just being able to build that catalog. And then the other hard part is you don't necessarily have colleagues to bounce ideas off of. We over time we ended up meeting people that were roughly in our size, which was great because this business, there's so many different ways to do it. There's no exact, blueprint to do what we're doing or necessarily be successful with what we're doing. And so you can learn a lot from other people. We met people just through kind of natural, like interacting with them because we knew that they had a cool blog that we use through different conferences. That really helped us as well. We get a lot of people ask us about like travel blogging and like what does it take? I want to do that. And usually the first question I ask is how much do you want to continue to love travel? Not that we don't love it anymore, but it definitely is for sure a job, right? It's for us, we've been doing it for so long that anywhere we're traveling, even if it is our own trip for leisure, it's not really leisure anymore because if it's an opportunity for content, it's hard for us to turn that off. So that there is that kind of mindset that shifts for people, and there's a lot of people that we know who we talk to, and they're like, yeah, I thought about it, I tried a little bit, and I realized like I'd rather just have a regular job, use that money to go travel, and then when I'm traveling, I get to really just enjoy and do what I'm doing. For us, we work with a lot of destinations that we cover. Besides the cities that we kind of picked to live in, where we really dictated what we were doing and writing about. A lot of the destinations we travel to, we work with the local destination marketing organizations, and with that, we're always balancing like a mix of what we want to do and a mix of what they want to cover. And similarly, even for the site, like we have a very SEO driven site. And with that, I mean, like we're doing a lot of research ahead of time before any of the content that we're writing, and we're making sure that it is going to be a good resource for people. It's something that people are searching. We want to usually have them discover us through kind of that anchor point, whatever they're looking for in the city, and then introduce them to things they may not have known about. But a good example of that is like I'm not a huge museum guy, but at the same time, there are certain cities that the museums are world class, and we want to cover it. We want to be able to put together guides for that. So we're not necessarily doing. When you go on vacation, you kind of pick things you want to do completely, right? Like that's you just do the things that you want to do. When you start running kind of more of a travel site and more of or working with these organizations, you don't necessarily dictate everything that you're doing. So that's definitely another sacrifice that you make. When it comes to time off now, people ask us like, what do you do? And for us, being home is kind of what's relaxing. That's it's kind of flip-flopped for us as opposed to most people who are like, I finally get time off of work, I'm going to go somewhere and really relax. For us, it's like, I got time off of work, I'm going to sit at home and just watch some TV and hang out. So really, like, I think there were in the middle of those years there, we were spending a lot of time. If we didn't have something planned, we were kind of wake up to sundown, we would be working on the site. I would say the last 2-3 years, we've really kind of shifted that and, shifted our focus of like, well, if you're working, what's the point of working really hard if you're not going to enjoy life as well? So really trying to find more of that work-life balance the last couple of years.
Yeah, let me hit on that real quick. Mental health is obviously a really big topic over these last few years, especially since the pandemic.
Yeah.
What have you learned over like the last few years to keep your mental health in a good place? Because, I imagine, like you said, traveling is a lot of people's getaway. It's becomes
Yeah.
your job, and then your job is like consistently creating content, and there is no like relaxation. You're always thinking, you're always on your phones and social media. So what
Yeah.
have you done to help your mental health?
Yeah, I think the past post pandemic, we've really pared down on just traveling in general. We've really tried to keep it to about 25% of our time being away.
Mm-hmm.
And then outside of that, it's just for us, it's been a shift to kind of put down roots again. We spent those years moving to a new city every year, which was great. We learned to make friends quickly, but also learned to understand that friends come in seasons, and so we may stay in touch with them after we leave the city, and some we don't. Now that we've been here for about 4 years, we're running into the situation where like, oh, people are starting to leave. Now we're the ones getting abandoned. And like, oh, what does it mean to actually like put down roots and actually have to invest in friendships again? And so that's been an interesting shift for us. And I think something that we really tried to focus on, like building kind of those deeper relationships, which has helped a lot.
That's great.
And then, yeah, I think the other big mental health thing for me has been like I'm just generally a workaholic. Like if you don't, again, if I don't have anything else to do, I will sit there and work on the blog, but really kind of setting hours for myself to like get off by a certain time, kind of force myself to turn off for that. And then finding new hobbies has been really helpful for that as well. Obviously, we have rock climbing, but when it's the summer here in Vegas, there's not much climbing to be done, especially outdoors. It's way too hot. So we do some indoor sessions, but I recently picked up pickleball again,
Nice.
especially
Nice.
now that it's just completely blowing up. It's been
Mm-hmm.
really fun to see, and so that's been something that for me has been really nice. Just there's no content that I necessarily have to make for it, is just up to me. And I still have a tendency to want to make content, but I'm really trying to say,
Yeah.
I don't need to. It's okay to just enjoy it.
Yeah. That's great advice. And one thing you mentioned too was you work with cities. So it's one of those things where I imagine people want to do what you do. You can't step into the big leagues immediately. You have to start somewhere, start
Yeah.
small and build it up. For somebody that's like, oh, I could just step into this, start working with cities. Like, how long did that take? Like, what was your process to actually start doing that?
We were really slow in working with brands and cities, I would say. Especially like I was the first couple of years, we really didn't even think to do that. At the time, I think we were still under the mentality of like we got to grow our numbers before we reach out. We this imposter syndrome type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everybody, if you have a small following, as long as it's niche and a dedicated following, there you always have the opportunity to reach out. I think what you said is you kind of nailed it, right? Like you don't want to necessarily jump right into the big leagues, and you just got to understand that like cities like Las Vegas, Los Angeles, New York, they're getting I can't imagine thousands of emails a day of just
Mm-hmm.
people requesting to work with them. So a couple things I always give advice to for people is start small, start with local places, not even cities and destinations, but just local like services and whatnot, and just practice pitching first. Get that time in, get comfortable with hearing no, get comfortable with getting ghosted, and then get excited when
Like
people
online
do work
dating
with
people.
you. Yeah. And get excited when they reach out and go above and beyond at that point.
Mm.
Really just start small, and that goes with both brands and destinations. And like just again, it doesn't hurt to reach out. I mean, I definitely reached out to big brands early in our days, but I also wasn't hurt when I never heard back from them. I understood that it's just that they're inundated and they're not going to look at every single thing. A lot of it is timing and luck too. You know, it's understanding like how fiscal years work and how budgeting works in a lot of these businesses. They're all running with limited budgets as well, and so just understanding the timing of that, learning to ask the right questions, taking those notes so that you know when to revisit again. And then building those relationships is super important. You know, we've seen that now that we've been in the industry for a long time. A lot of people move around, they shift around jobs, they go to different destinations, they go to different PR companies and different you know, different jobs. And it's when you grow a relationship and they're impressed with your work, they remember you when they move somewhere else. So there have been plenty of times where, you know, we work with somebody, we work really well with them at one place, they move somewhere, and they hit us up at their new spot. So it's really, you know, it's just, again, I always encourage people to practice. And finding a mentor is really nice. You know, finding somebody who is a little bit ahead of you, who has done it just a little bit longer, and can kind of give you some of that feedback. And I would give these, you know, those people the same grace that you should be giving these destinations. You know, just because you ask them and you reach out and you may not hear back, that, you know, that's okay. They may be busy. But it never hurts to ask. I'm always on the air of like, you know, ask, be polite about it, never feel that you're entitled to it. But if you ask, you know, getting a no is not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't get anything you don't ask for. I mean, that goes for all
Yeah.
businesses for
Yeah.
sure. I think something that's kind of standing out in my mind as you're talking to is maybe something that also like kind of makes them different or somewhat unique. What would you say has given you like the staying power, and what is like your uniqueness compared to other travel bloggers?
Yeah, you know, I think we really focused. We decided early on that we were going to be much more SEO driven, and really focus on that data. Um, a lot at that time, the handful of travel bloggers that were out there and really dominating the space, I would say, were huge personalities. You know, people knew them for them. They knew who they were. Um, for the longest time, and still, honestly, even now, we have a lot of people use our site who never know who we are necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
We're in photos and you know we're there, but we're just not a huge personality driven site necessarily, which has been okay with us, and partly kind of what we wanted. Our goal was to do that. And you know, the reason for that had shifted over time, but we continued to kind of follow with that. I think for us, the other big thing that set us apart was, you know, we picked that niche of really focusing on the States, on North America. And so we've really kind of again like been a big presence there, and really, you know, we call ourselves kind of indoorsy people who like to test ourselves outdoors
Yeah.
and step outside of the comfort zone. And so really just we just try to showcase, you know, again, not necessarily heavily Asian American content, but like, again, to see people who look like you doing things that you never thought was possible, is something that we've been fortunate to be able to do.
That's awesome. With your experience, I'm just curious, there's probably people wondering this too. What posts have you noticed have like the most bang on social media? Like which ones blow up? Is there a consistent pattern to that?
You know, social media is tough. I would
Yeah.
say I am neither of us are the best at social media when it comes to like Instagram and whatnot, trying to just stay with the algorithm. Um, our main hub has always been the blog. Uh, Esther actually does a killer job on Pinterest. You know,
Mm,
she does 8 to 10 million monthly views on Pinterest.
it's amazing.
Um, Social media, that's a tough one. I don't even know how to answer that. I think honestly, like I've gone back and forth. I've gone from like doing what's trendy to you know, just doing stuff that makes me smile. Um, I think really the formula is finding something that fulfills you when you're doing it. and that makes it, that ends up being clear to both your followers, but also gives you longevity in what you're doing.
Mm.
There have been periods again that we've like tried to shift and stay on trend, and we feel a little bit of our soul dying just doing that because it's not something that we enjoy doing, you know. And we've kind of really tried to refocus on just creating content that makes us smile as well.
I'm just curious now, do you know like your top locations that have gotten the most interaction?
In terms of the blog,
Yeah,
yeah,
blog and just looks and clicks and feedback and questions. Like which locations are people kind of, I guess, most into?
yeah, you know, we do a lot of our national park stuff does really well.
Mhm.
And that was kind of before and after pandemic. You know, I think it's just something that people who are looking for national park stuff, you know, there's the way that we kind of Esther's very particular with the type of content she's creating and wants to make sure that it is both inspirational but also informational and useful.
Mhm.
So I think she did a great job in really creating that voice and doing that in this space. Um, because again, we're SEO driven. We really a lot of the content that does well was somewhat predictable. You know, we were creating stuff for cities that were more like bucket list type content that
Mhm.
we knew would do well. You know, right now I guess things always shift. I think right now one of our top performing posts are like the best shows in Vegas. And that's just something that as because Vegas opened up early, you know, when it came to post pandemic, they
Mhm.
yeah, that started to take off and has kind of continued to do well. So yeah, you know, the sites that do well for us definitely fluctuate and shift over the years. But we again try to keep everything up to date as much as possible.
Yeah, I will say just to give a shout out to you and the other travel bloggers, like when you do go to a site like yours and you take notes and write them down, it does make your trip a hell of a lot better because you're not going to leave there thinking, oh, I didn't miss that, or I didn't see that, or I didn't try this. I mean, what a difference. Like we just went to Italy a couple weeks ago. And thank God we had people make suggestions. We wrote them down. We had like the best
Mm,
food, the best gelato. We saw the best locations at the best time, the best season, and all that stuff. And what a difference. Just giving you a shout out there because for people listening to
thank
this,
you,
is
thank
like,
you.
oh, that's probably people think, they're just doing this for fun or whatever. But no, it really does make a difference to your trip. You do a really good job and it's very appreciated.
I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm curious to know. Okay, so what's your favorite national park, and what is, in your opinion, the most underrated national park?
Wow. Personal favorite is probably Joshua Tree,
Okay.
and that's because we climb. I would
Uh-huh.
say Joshua Tree, if you don't rock climb, you can get through it in one day. Very cool place, see a bunch of rocks, cool trees, great sunsets. But if you do rock climb, it is a playground for sure.
Hmm.
So we find ourselves revisiting that national park quite a bit because of that. Um, Underrated. Wow, that's a tough one. Um, I think there are a lot of national parks that people overlook out there, and they have very unique um, experiences. So one, for example, is Congaree National Park in South Carolina.
Hmm.
They every summer it's like one of like a handful of places that has the where the fireflies sync up during mating season. And so photographers will come from all over the place, and it's for like a week long where you'll show up and there's just thousands of fireflies and they end up lighting up in sync. So you're just
Oh
like you
shit,
just
that's
picture,
awesome.
and that's one of those things like, you know, I never would have known about it if I hadn't visited and kind of done that research. So I think it's really cool to see some of these parks that feature feature kind of those natural elements that you would never think of.
Super cool. Yeah, I'm thinking also of another question. I've been to Craters of the Moon twice, which I think was awesome, and I've heard it's on the verge of possibly becoming a national park. Is
Mm-hmm.
is there a non-national park that is perhaps like one of your favorite locations?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton, right? We love exploring even like the state parks. Like here near Vegas, you have Valley of Fire State Park, which is an
Mhm.
hour away. Super popular for kind of the Instagrammy
Yeah.
shots.
Yeah.
But I would say that I'm surprised on how many people who visit Vegas who have never heard of it or never even think to like leave the strip.
Mhm.
I think that's one thing that Vegas has this reputation of, like it's just the strip. And really, I would say it's one of the most underrated cities for outdoor exploration.
Mhm.
When it comes to like the Southwest, it is about as central as it gets. We have, I think, 7 national parks within like 3-4 hour drive.
Wow.
You have tons of state parks and just these beautiful landscapes to explore.
Mm. That's yeah, that sounds absolutely incredible. I'm thinking when I went to Vegas, have you ever gone to the Haunted Museum, the Zach Bagans
I
Haunted Museum?
haven't. That's one place we're not into scary things that much, and we need to go there because we have a museum post that we need to update. But
There you go. It's a good time. It's
I've
definitely
heard it. I've
freaky.
heard it's creepy.
It's definitely freaky. Yeah, when I went out to Vegas a few years back, it was the tail end of my Utah and Arizona Page Antelope Canyon trip,
Nice.
and ended up in Vegas. And I was like, I got to go to the Haunted Museum. So check that out. It's definitely pretty creepy.
Yeah, yeah, because they have them like really, really haunted stuff in there.
Yeah, you have to sign a waiver. I mean, I believe in that, but at the same time, it's like signing the waiver also was kind of like a little bit for show, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
But
yeah, for sure.
one of those things you
It's
don't
one
want
of
to play
those
around
things
with.
where, like, for me, I'm like, there's some of the stuff do I believe it? I don't know, but you know what? I'd just rather not. I'd rather not mess with it just in
Yep.
case. I
Yep.
don't
You
need to be dragging anything home with me.
don't play. That's the problem. Yeah. It's one thing to be scared there. It's another to be scared in
Yeah,
your own home. Yeah. Don't play with
yeah.
that. But no, I'm enjoying asking you some of your favorite like locations and places. Like just overall, like what's like one or two of like some of your just favorite memories that just stand out to you since you became a travel blogger?
Um, wow. I would say we swam with wild whale sharks in Indonesia.
I saw that.
That
That's
was
freaking awesome.
that's probably one of the most memorable kind of like experiences. Um, I've really enjoyed kind of like before we started climbing, we did a couple of those bucket list type hikes. Machu Picchu was the first one, the Inca
Wow.
Trail, and then the W Circuit in Patagonia. The W Circuit in Patagonia we did during their winter, our
Mm,
summer, which is kind of opposite of when people normally do it. But what was amazing was that we saw maybe like 20 people total during that whole trip.
mm.
So the days were really short, but it was just spectacular to be out there kind of on your own. And equally freaky because there's one leg of the trip where um, there are a lot of pumas, and normally you just don't know that they're there, but because of the snow that's there, you see all their tracks.
Oh wow.
So you're just like, okay, they're here. You just got to be careful. The lodge that we stayed at there, the guides and a couple of the people who were manning the lodge would the generator was like 100 feet away from the lodge, and they would only turn it on each evening and then turn it off. And they would go out there in like teams of 3 or 4, a couple of them with a bat. And the primary reason is just in case Puma shows up, they
Is that a
have people.
common occurrence there? Do people get killed by pumas?
So when we asked the locals, they said it's not super common. But they are out there, and
Mm,
if it's more so like if you have kids and kind of like small prey,
mhm.
they shouldn't bother humans for
As
the
your
most
cat
part.
jumps up behind you.
Yeah,
Small
exactly.
prey.
They shouldn't bother you, but again, if you're yourself, you're much more prone to being attacked, and that's why they go out of there in those groups.
Yeah,
I mean, we
makes
definitely
sense.
spotted a couple pumas in the distance
Ooh,
there.
beautiful
Yeah.
but scary at the same time.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
I don't know about that. All right, so favorite hike that you've ever done?
Ooh, favorite hike. Forgot the name of the hike. Precipice Trail, Acadia National Park.
Oh wow, nice.
I think it's the name of it. Or is it Beehive? It's one of those two. It's on the blog.
In Acadia. Okay.
Yeah, Acadia has a really beautiful hike that's definitely kind of exposed. You are climbing some rungs and whatnot, but a very memorable and just like yeah, spectacular hike to be on.
Okay. So if I'm afraid of heights, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not, but like I said, it's always for us. We always encourage people, just a little step outside of your comfort zone.
Little steps.
Little steps.
All right. I'm enjoying this. Favorite road to drive on.
Wow, favorite road to drive on. Yeah, there's not that much there. It's hard to beat like that Big Sur,
Yeah.
the coast, the highway coast, right at Big Sur area. It's just so beautiful out there.
Mm. I was,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I was thinking you might say going to the Sun Road because we're
That
talking
is,
about ledges and cliffs, and I was like, I'm gonna ask what
yeah.
your favorite road is.
Yes, that is a good one too.
All right. Any oh shit or scariest moments that you've had?
Yeah. Um, I would say it's probably the most memorable and best story for scary moment is we went out to Reflection Canyon in Lake Powell, and normally that's either I think a 10-mile one-way hike in, or you can rent a boat. It's about a 3-hour boat ride and then like a short mile and a half to hike to where you want to be. So we went with the boat. We got it out there. We had a friend who knew this kind of like I would, now that I've done it, a little bit of a sketchy trail to get up there. Um, we got to the spot and started setting up camp, and clouds rolled in, and like not like just some fluffy clouds, but dark gray clouds. And I was there. It was the two of us, and we were joined by two other photographers. And so all three were setting up their cameras while I was setting up our tent. And it was getting windy, so I had put some rocks in our tent. There's nowhere to stake to the ground because you're essentially just on rocks. And I go on checking the girls, seeing if their setup's okay, and then I go come back, and I turn back around, and my tent's about 15 feet in the air. And I was just like, there's just this moment of panic, like,
Oh man.
oh no. So it started kind of like flying towards the canyon edge, and I'm sitting there just trying to stay under it. It finally comes back down, thank God. But it definitely ripped some holes in it.
Oof.
And the weather just started turning really bad. And this was like everything against camping 101, lightning and thunder, but we're like kind of exposed on top of a mountain, or a cliff top, but there was no way to really get out either, because the hike in was so sketchy that now that the rock was slick, it was just way too dangerous. And plus then we'd be on a boat and have to go 3 hours in like super choppy water. There was the 10-mile hike out, but we didn't know that route. And so we just kind of hunkered down. We tried to find little coves where we could leave our tents. My tent ended up having a couple holes in it because it got picked up. And so we're like, it's one of those like most sleepless nights ever. You just, every time you kind of dozed off, you would dream that the wind was just picking you and your tent up, or you were getting dripped on. But the photos turned out amazing.
When was that? Because I got to look
Really
at that.
was
When was
memorable.
that trip?
That was probably like 2019, I think, roughly.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta find
Um,
that.
yeah, I'll be sure to send you a link to that photo.
Yeah, please
Uh,
do. I'll post that for people listening to this. I'll post that link too in the show notes so people can go take a look at that. That's awesome.
yeah.
All right. So food, I love having food when I travel. Is
Mm.
there a city and or maybe in a small town that has the best food?
Depends on what kind of food you want.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that we've decided. There's there's not there's no one place that has every type of amazing food that you want. Um, New York, we loved living there,
Mhm.
and there was just endless places to eat. Um, and what's cool about New York is like you can get amazing cheap eats, but you can also get obviously like the Michelin 3 restaurants and like that scale.
Mm.
Um, I always like to shout out Las Vegas because I would say, especially between the time we lived here first and now, the food scene has completely exploded, and there's so much good food here. One thing people don't realize is that Vegas has amazing Hawaiian food. Outside of
Mm.
Hawaii, it's got the best Hawaiian food anywhere, and
Nice.
that's because it's the ninth island. People, there are a ton of Hawaiians who live here. People from Hawaii, they say like, well, we live in Hawaii, where else would we vacation? So they love coming here to gamble. There's a lot of history in that. Like one of the downtown hotels early on was really catering towards Hawaiians, and they would offer free flights to
Oh
Hawaiians
wow.
just to come visit as long as they stayed at that hotel. UNLV and University of Hawaii has relationships, so there's a lot of kind of like trading back and forth, and people come to school here and end up staying here. And so because of that, this area has just spectacular Hawaiian food.
Oh,
And that's one of
amazing.
the things we always take people to.
Amazing.
Korean food, my wife's Korean. And so, she's always looking for good Korean food. And honestly, nowhere beats LA for that.
Okay.
We've lived in most of the major cities or eaten a lot of major cities, and there's nothing that compares to LA Korean food.
Okay, so I'm asking this for me personally. My wife's and my favorite food is sushi. I saw on a podcast that you took a sushi break, and I was just so I'm guessing you like sushi. Do you and your wife like
Yes,
sushi?
yes,
Where's the
definitely.
best sushi you've ever had?
Um, so if money is not a thing,
If money is a thing and money is not a thing, feel
yeah,
free to
yeah,
give
yeah.
both
So
answers.
okay, so if money isn't a thing, we did go to Masa, which is the Michelin 3
Mm,
sushi restaurant in New York City. Um, amazing, amazing
amazing.
experience. The food was like the quality was just out of this world.
Mm.
But it is the most expensive meal I've ever had. Um, in terms of cheap, I would say honestly, Vegas has amazing sushi.
Mm.
Not the place you would pick because we're landlocked, but
Right.
because of the strip, and I'm saying sushi off the strip
Mm.
because of the strip, you get quality fish flown in daily. Because of that demand and the restaurants there. But the rest of the valley ends up benefiting from that.
Mm.
And so Las Vegas has a ton of all you can eat sushi places.
Oh
Um,
yeah, my favorite.
Everything is made to order. So it's not like a buffet, where it's all pre-made and like the rice is getting hard because it's been sitting out for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. You order everything, they make it to order, and they bring it to your table.
Yes.
And you can get all you can eat for 30, $35 here.
That's
So
great.
yeah, so when it comes to like value, that's an amazing deal.
Yeah, Vegas is really booming. It's been booming for a while, and now
Yeah.
you're stealing baseball teams from Oakland and
Yeah, I know. I mean, we
and
already stole
football teams.
the right, right.
Have you
Yeah.
gone to any of the games? Have you checked that out at all? Or
No, so we haven't done Esther's not super into sports. And then I'm just not into the crowds
yeah,
necessarily. But the logistics of going to some of the games here is kind of a pain. They didn't really think through parking and all of that. So that's been a
mm,
big complaint. But we have a lot of friends who go to Raiders games all the time or to the Golden Knights,
yeah, that's
since we
cool.
won that. Yeah. And so it's really cool seeing this city turn into a sports city.
Hmm.
I grew up going to games. I'm from Atlanta,
Right.
originally from Atlanta, and so a heartbreaking city to be a fan of, but is always been kind of fun. We grew up going to Braves and Hawks games and Falcons games all the time.
The Braves got their one. That's all you
Yeah,
got, but you got their
I
one.
know.
Every year you're in contention. But hey, you guys are
It's
killing it.
always in contention.
You're killing it this year. You have a great
Yeah,
chance this year.
yeah,
Didn't Vegas just open up some big globe sphere thing or something like that? That's in
yeah.
Vegas, right?
The MSG Sphere.
What is that?
It's the same owners as the as Madison Square Garden,
Okay.
in New York. So now that they have the square or the cube there,
Yeah.
they decided to open a Sphere here. It is just a kind of I don't know what the inside looks like. I think it's like a just circular stadium style seating. And so I know U2 is supposed to be opening up in there with kind of the first shows.
Wow.
But the exterior is crazy, right? It's made of like, it's just a giant screen on the globe. So they just turned it on a couple days ago. On the 4th, I think actually is when they
Okay.
turned it on. And some of the images they throw on there are super trippy.
Yeah, the eyeball I saw was like, what
yeah,
the
yeah, the
hell?
eyeball. There's one that's like it looks like rippling water or like metal,
Wow,
and it's just very realistic looking. So it's kind of this just general events venue space.
that's
So
cool.
it'll be interesting to see kind of what ends up getting hosted there.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I think I got one final question for you.
yeah,
Got to ask this. So next on your bucket list, I don't stop at one thing. If there's a couple things on your bucket list, tell me that. But what's very, very high on your bucket list?
yeah. So for us, like personally, again, rock climbing's like kind of one thing that we're starting to do to travel more for. Um, we really want to go to Rocklands, which is in South Africa,
Oh
to
wow.
climb. There's a lot of places here in the States that we want to go back to. Waco Tanks in Texas, Leavenworth up in Washington, Bishop in California. So a lot of cool local spots that we'll definitely hit up, but we want to like kind of big bucket list, I would say, is Rocklands. Um, in terms of travel wise, or just like more places we want to visit, we definitely still have quite a few national parks we want to get to. So no particular order for those. We've really been excited to try to get up to Alaska to explore some of those.
Mm.
And then internationally, I would say on my bucket list, the top two would be Antarctica, which we
Yeah,
are
that's
doing
awesome.
next January. We're
Yeah.
doing with Scenic Cruises, so we're super excited about that. And then I personally would like to go to Madagascar.
Wow.
I really like weird wildlife, and I want to see kind of the lemurs out there and the trees and just amazing landscapes they have out there.
That's incredible. So you said you're working with a cruise line for Antarctica?
Yeah, we
What does that
are.
mean working with? I want to do that. That's freaking awesome.
So they are hosting us on a trip in January,
Oh man.
Scenic, and we're excited to experience the ship and really show people how amazing it can be to go down there.
That's cool. So that by hosting, you mean they're paying for your stuff for you to produce content on your trip to Antarctica?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
man, you're living that is living the life right there.
Yeah, I can't complain. I can't complain.
A lot of people will probably decline that, but shit, I'd love to go. Like Greenland's another one at the top of my list too, for whatever
Yeah,
reason. My wife's like, stop talking about Greenland. I'm not going to Greenland. It's like, oh,
it
it
looks
seems
it
interesting.
looks spectacular.
Yeah, seems interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jacob, this has been a blast. I want to
Yes,
end this on
absolutely.
for people listening to you. Like I know you've given a lot of great advice and you've given a great look behind the scenes and everything you do and all the work that goes into this. So if there's people that are still kind of thinking maybe they want to do this, and especially this whole Antarctica trip now you just said that they're paying for, it's freaking awesome. What are some final words of advice for people that look up to you and look at you and say, hey, this is a lifestyle I'm thinking of doing?
Yeah, I think, think it through in terms of like what your goals are and what you want to do with it. There's a lot of ways that this looks successful. There are people that want to do it just, strictly as weekend warriors and like they're happy with getting stuff, getting trips in exchange for creating content.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other people who want to do it as a full-time gig, to pay all your bills and whatnot. So it really, I think it depends on what your goals are and what you're wanting to do, and use that as a way to kind of shape what you're doing. And then beyond that, it's like you constantly learn. Look to other people, talk to other people who are doing this, get their feedback on. Everybody has their own tips on how to do this better and what has worked for them.
Mm-hmm.
And we learn from a lot of our other creator friends on what works for them, and we integrate some of that, and some of that doesn't work for us. So really doing that, it has really helped. And then lastly, I would say, again, set goals and do your best to meet them. I think there have been people who I've talked to who um, they're never able to get started because they feel like they need a polished product immediately.
Mm.
One thing that is nice about just starting off is that you can experiment with stuff. We made a ton of mistakes when we were starting, and we made decisions that in retrospect we're like, oh, why'd we do that? And that's not in line with what we wanted to do. But you give yourself that grace to make those mistakes, and you don't have necessarily a large audience that is going to judge you for making mistakes. So while you're still new and getting started, that's when you can really experiment.
For sure. I can second
Yeah.
that, because when I was starting my podcast out, there was a couple episodes I might have forgot to plug in my mic. Something wasn't
Yeah.
working properly. My light wasn't on right. Like, it's just stupid stuff. Like, I'm afraid to go back to even listen to it, but that's how you learn. It really is
That
how you
is
learn.
that is how you learn. And you know what? Lastly, just be good people.
Yeah.
Good people want to work with good people,
Yeah.
and I think it's very clear when you are and when you're not.
Mm.
So just doing that and treating everybody the way you want to be treated is super important in this space.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. And I got to ask you too, where did the jump come from? Those are some honestly super fucking cool, man. I mean,
Thanks. I
great job.
appreciate it.
I was looking through these photos the other night with my wife. I was like, dude, you get some air, man.
It's I started that. We were on a trip. We were in Morocco, and I was like, man, I feel like I don't know. I do the same pose in every photo, and like it's kind of boring. There's nothing that stands out. I just want to do something different. And it just kind of evolved over that time. That was kind of where I did the first one. And then it became a thing. People definitely said, "Hey, you're the guy who does that jump, right?" Um, I'm turning 40 this month, and my knees are definitely hating me for doing it too
You
often.
get some air, that's for sure.
So yeah, I'm starting to kind of taper it off, but I have to start stretching before I do the jump now. If I don't, I feel it for sure.
Well, happy 40th. Welcome to the club. I joined that
Thank you,
last
thank
year.
you.
So
Oh, nice.
come on in. More the merrier.
Yes.
Yeah. So before we let you go here, I want you to pub where everybody can find you. I'll also link all of these in the show notes as well.
Awesome. Yeah, you can find us at localadventurer.com. And then Instagram is probably where we're most active in terms of social media. You can find me at Jacob the Foo, my wife at Esther Julie, and we also have kind of a general account, Local Adventurer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, your content's awesome. I love your
Thank you,
new
thank
Wes
you.
Anderson stuff is great. Like,
Appreciate it.
yeah, you do a great job. I mean, it's like the best of both worlds. I know your wife's a photographer. She probably helps still with like the videos and the photography when you travel. You do
Yeah.
great stuff with the SEO and the analytics. I mean, that is a dangerous combination. That's how you get to be top 5 in the US. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Jacob.